Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Kerfuffle webinar. And I am absolutely delighted to have here today Ashley Cornelius and David Hanna from Cornerstone Tax. How are you, gents?
Oh, I'm fine, and good morning to you.
Very well, thank you, Simon. Good morning.
I don't know. There seems to be just a really obvious joke in there that we're just about to deal with tax, and there's a stormtrooper looking over your shoulder, ready to go. And David, as you just said off camera there, we've got the stormtrooper up there, and we've got Princess Leia with your resplendent earphones on there. I'm assuming you can hear me in those babies.
Oh, I know, they're absolutely perfect. You know, the other joke, of course, for the slightly older generation is, of course, that these make me look like a Cyberman. But
I mean, we're really going. As I said before, I did not expect us to deviate off on this when we're looking at tax issues, but this is how you get to my sweet spot.
I'm just glad that David hasn't worn his gold bikini today to complete the Leia visual.
That's a tough sell.
sorry, mate. I was in the hot tub last night. That's at the dry cleaners now, so you're all right.
Yeah, we don't want to start going with too many analogies, or the audience will point out that I'm looking a lot like Jabba the Hutt these days. But anyway, gents, I can't believe a less seamless segue to us talking about the stamping out incorrect SDLT. than looking at Cybermen and obviously everything from 1970s and 80s sci-fi, but we're going to do that anyway. So, gents, look, we're here today to talk about obviously Cornerstone Tax. You've been helping the public out from not paying too much tax in terms of SDLT. You hit me with just David, a staggering figure that you've been able to save over £14 million for the public at the moment, with covering just over 600 cases for people that were going to be paying too much tax.
Well, in actual fact, Simon, that's the figure of money that we've recovered from HMRC from already overpaid tax in the last 12 months.
It's incredible, absolutely.
We've also been able to swerve, as I describe it, by spotting issues early on before completion. We've been able to swerve about another 8 million.
Staggering, absolutely staggering. So, guys, could you just obviously, for people that don't know the whole area and everything else there, could you just give us an elevator pitch of the issue that you're helping solve for people, and just a mini bit of background about yourselves, just to give a bit of context?
Okay, fine. I mean, Cornerstone Tax exists because when stamp duty was introduced, stamp duty land tax was introduced in 2003, replacing the old stamp duty. The solicitors kept on doing business as if it were the old stamp duty, not this new self-assessment tax. And the accountants have always thought that it's a lawyer's tax. So there was a gap in understanding. We stepped in to fill that gap, and particularly since 2016, when the rates diverged massively, we were seeing error after error after error, failure to notice reliefs, and there are 49 of them, and some of the more esoteric areas like connected parties. So particularly with this important distinction between what is residential and what is not, and that can have a massive impact on the tax bill, we decided to get into the area and advise people.
That's excellent. Thank you for the overview there. And I mean, how much of an issue do you think this is? I mean, how frequently do you see errors in a stamp duty payment? Is this one of those ones that is once in a blue moon, or is it happening far more often than people would think?
I believe it's happening far more often than people think. I mean, that 14 million figure was recovered on just over 600 transactions. On average, there are 120,000 transactions a month in this country. Yeah. So as a statistical sample, it's tiny. What we don't know is, and I've seen what we don't know is exactly how many stamp duty returns are wrong and how many are overpaid. But I had a friend who works funny enough, in professional indemnity insurance as a solicitor, and he said it's probably as many as 4 in 10. Now, I'm not saying it is that high, but it potentially could be.
And you obviously, when I was looking at the website, going through details, when we were looking at the company before you, thanks for coming on, Kerfuffle, by the way, that goes without saying there. The first question that you make, the point that everybody asks you is obviously, is it legal there? And of course, you make the point, well, any payments come back directly from HMRC, don't they? So it's as clear as can be, can't you? But can we just deal with that element up front? When people do come to you and obviously ask that question, what's your stock response back to them?
Well, it is legal. I mean, what we're going to do is we're going to advise you on the law. We're going to advise you in line with HMRC guidance. We're going to advise you in line with everything we know, because for those of people who aren't familiar with the tax environment, you start with the statute, the legal frame, you then go to case law, then you go to revenue guidance. And in one instance, we had a 3-year battle with the revenue over multiple dwellings relief.
Yeah.
And the minimum rate, and we actually ended up forcing the revenue to change their guidance because they got it wrong.
Yeah.
So, and this bears down on why the problem is so widespread. Is that HMRC have their own calculator. You notice the inverted commas, which in 2018 they admitted is only an estimator. You're supposed to do it properly, was their own phrase. But many of the online calculators that you see slavishly follow HMRC's estimator and therefore repeat the errors. So typically, this is why problems occur. Yeah. And you know, I remember dealing with a client just before Christmas last year, and he's a prop trader, rang me up, said, I'm buying this property, 1.85 million. From a deceased person's estate, what's the stamp duty? And I said, nothing. And there was this pause for breath. And I said, no, because there's a special relief for that.
Yeah.
He'd never heard of it. And he'd been a property trader for 10 years.
Yeah.
So I'll call it a lack of education, a lack of information, not just amongst the client base, but also really amongst the advisor base. There's a large degree of ignorance is perhaps too strong a word, but a large degree of, particularly with solicitors, going, well, it just works the same way as it has done for the last 16, 17 years, and not looking. And one of the things we try and do, and we do at Cornerstone, is we ask for everything. I mean, every single little detail, sometimes even right down to questioning the accuracy of the estate agent's particulars, because what might be described as an attractive outbuilding was in fact a commercial workshop, and that can have a material impact.
And so I suppose, just like in any area where there have been a lot of layers, a lot of, you know, over time, quite a convoluted set of rules have developed there. I mean, that's just, it doesn't matter what walk of life you're in, that's when you need a specialist, isn't it?
Oh, completely. You know, to rely on a non-specialist would be, well, to use the phrase, that's like asking the scrub nurse to do brain surgery. The outcomes are not likely to be good, are they?
No, I don't think we're quite at that state, but we're going to wait and see. Well, and guys, how long has this been going on then? Was it, I think from what you'd said previously, there was it was changes in laws or statutes that had led to the increase in this, but do you want to just give us, I mean, has this always been an issue, or has there been a point in time when this really started becoming a major point?
It really started to become a major point around 2015, 2016. Up until that point, the rates of stamp duty on property between residential and non-residential have been the same. Suddenly it came into sharp focus, because if you're not completely residential, then you don't pay the resi rates, but you don't pay the 3% surcharge, nor do you pay the new 2% non-resident surcharge.
Yeah.
And so that's what we call the initial start point. Get that right, and you're heading in the right direction. Then look at reliefs, because even on a relative, I'll call it relatively modest dwelling at £1 million, depends on where you're based. If you're listening to this, that may be immodest. But if that's got an annex, there's anything from £15,000 to a maximum of £87,000 per annex saved. So
I mean,
if you were to
such an incredible jump out figure right there on just one element, as you've been able to to jump into.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you think about the sales and negotiation process as far as the agent is concerned, how many people walk away from a deal because their initial first guesstimate of SDLT is wrong?
Yeah.
How many, how much more could you improve your, the seller's position, which is ultimately who the agent is acting for? How much could you improve the price obtained if the prospective buyer had an accurate picture of what the stamp duty was likely to be? I mean, we just looked at a 2 million acquisition in Cumbria, which is naturally a very large property.
Yeah.
But the prospective purchaser rang us and said, "Are you sure this is mixed use?" And I went, "Well, you're buying 200 acres. It sounds to me like that's a bit big for a garden." But he had to check because his lawyer, his solicitor, wasn't willing to go to the mat and go, "Yes, it's definitely that." And it's one of the differences with us is we are willing to go to the mat and go, "It's definitely that figure. We'll hang our hat on it."
Yeah.
Like you mentioned just there, Simon, sort of, and David referred to us. Education is really key to the way we work and dealing with our clients. And you'd just be amazed at how many people we speak to day in and day out who are, been in the property industry for 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years, hold senior positions at, leading national estate agencies, etc. And we'll tell them how we work, what we do, and what's available. And their comment will be, "I had no idea." So education is really key, and trying to get that message across that you don't have to overpay when you're well within your right not to.
Does that create a bit of a barrier, Ashley, as well, in terms of actually some of these, some of our viewers here today might think, "I just didn't know that," and there's actually that barrier of saying "I didn't know that" is one of the harshest things, because I suppose for what they've got to do, of course, is they've got to be able to communicate to their own clients effectively about why they should be talking to you guys. And if they're outside of that comfort zone, I can imagine that this is where they feel a little bit nervousness. So is that literally just that education piece you talk about there, about you will talk to the agents about how best to introduce yourselves to their own clients? Yeah,
absolutely. And for me, sort of the areas I work in and focus on, that is the kind of the biggest challenge that we see, or certainly one of the biggest challenges. David will go into further detail, but just actually trying to convince someone that this is a legitimate thing. You're well within your right. This is the correct way to do it. Everyone's so used to the traditional way of doing it incorrectly that habits are hard to break, and the initial reaction is quite often, "Oh, that must be a scam. Can't be correct. It must be wrong, etc." But something that really works, and obviously they then have to put their reputation based on what we're telling them, and there's an element of a perceived risk from their point of view. Do I want to, roll this out into my estate agency and tell my clients this if it could come back and bite me? So that education and trying to garner that trust, etc., is really key. And what we often do is, we'll get a single deal over the line, and that can demonstrate and show this is what's achievable. This is what we can do. It works. It's real. And that can help to build trust. But something that really works well for us is just word of mouth. And, we might do a deal or 2 deals or 3 deals or save a shed load of stamp duty for a certain developer or an estate agency. And more often than not, what we find is, in a few weeks' time, etc., we might get a call from someone saying, "Oh, hi, I heard you helped Dave with this issue. I've got a similar issue. Can you help us," etc. So word of mouth is a really key part of our our marketing and the spreading of what we do. But yeah, absolutely, that initial challenge of trying to convince people that this is a real thing is a significant one.
And I saw some of the testimonials from your own clients that have had it. I mean, I can just imagine how that works in a sense of sat round a dinner table, them saying you've got to talk to these guys. That's what you need to happen on a wider scale, isn't it? Those kind of fireside conversations and chats that just people are able to get that across, is that this isn't something niche or something like that people should be looking at this almost as just as a normal check in the part of the moving process that they're going through.
It should be built into that conveyancing process or that state agency process, and this is, I guess, while we're talking with you guys, it should be part of that process, just as important as finding the correct solicitor or the surveys. The stamp duty is a fundamental element of that, and getting it wrong can be extremely costly. Sorry, David.
No, so I was going to go on to say is that, you know, that there should be no harm in going and looking.
No.
But there is no harm in asking. Fundamentally, is an estate agent's reputation online if he recommends a professional advisor? Well, why would it be different from stamp duty advisors to, say, solicitors or insurance brokers? It's just one of the range of services that needs to be brought to bear as part of the offer acceptance deal cycle.
Yeah.
If this allows agents and their selling clients to improve the price performance and help close a deal, then surely that's a value-added tool. I mean, we've acted more times than I care to remember, but we've had particularly large complex properties referred into us by high-value estate agents who I can't mention, specifically to do the analysis prior to listing the property.
Right.
And one agent rather creatively put guaranteed stamp duty saving on the Rightmove listing.
Right.
Now that property shifted like that.
I can imagine.
And you've, of course, the other thing at the moment is, and we'll talk about the demographic shift, but people are, I'll call it, leaving the cities. And that's been a huge move in the last 12, 18 months, and it looks likely to continue. And again, the further out you go, the more likely it is your property is not going to be 100% residential. There's a value exchange. You know, if you sell your £500,000 or £1 million flat in London and go and buy £1 million in Wisbech or Hunstanton, you're likely to have a very much more substantial property, which is likely to have the annex, the workshops, the whatever. And so you're stepping out of what is arguably a purely residential element into an element where you could be getting the advantage of that lower rate. And that's surely worth knowing about.
Guys, I feel early on a Monday morning before this actually goes out live, but I feel like I've actually learned something, which is always a great way to start the day. So, gents, Ashley, David, thank you so much for giving us some information. We'll catch up over the coming weeks and months as well to explore this in more detail. But for now, thank you very much.
No, you're very welcome, and thank you for
Thank you for
inviting
having
us,
us,
Simon.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.